Venri Chapter 17 Timeline Beginning of Mass Effect 3 Priority Mars Shepard. She was horrified to see the man's face. He looked like a husk. She moved in to check. They've definitely done something to him. Kaidan was staring at him. And by they, you mean Cerberus? They did this to their own guy? Is this what they did to you? Was it because she was so accustomed to horror that she didn't have the right horror in her tone, and she took indoctrination for granted? Did Kaidan expect her to cry? Maybe she should have cried. Too late now. Liara said, "Kaidan, that's not fair." Kaidan took a step back and glared at them one at a time, saying, "So both of you? I should be able to ask the question." Moram told him, "You have been asking the same question for a good long while, Kaidan. You need to trust me, and I need to trust you. Fortunately, I do trust you because you are trustworthy. What I want to ask is, why do you think I'm untrustworthy?" It's not that. You I trust. It's that you don't know that I'm me. Yeah, look at this guy. Do you think he knew he was going to turn into that? Did they tell him, or did it just happen one day and he was too indoctrinated to know that he was more monster than human? What you're asking is entirely fair. We can take a moment and address it. Unfortunately, the answer isn't easy or fair. What are you looking for? You expect me to say, "All hail the Reapers," and that's the answer you want? Are you looking for me to slip up? What qualifies as a slip? Am I okay until I start to turn blue and shiny? There's nothing I can do, nothing I can show you to prove I'm not indoctrinated. The fact that I spent months in custody and they let me go means nothing. The fact that I have a ship and a command means nothing. The fact that Liara is with me means nothing. The fact that James told you I was under surveillance means nothing. The fact that Anderson gave the Normandy to me and not you, what do those things mean? What can I do, Kaidan? If I pull my heart out of my chest and show it to you, and if it shows no sign of indoctrination, you can say that's not proof that I'm not indoctrinated. I can't prove a negative to you. I can't have you doubting me in a critical moment that may or may not get you or me or someone else killed. You have no indoctrination test to run. You don't want to be betrayed, and believe me, I understand that feeling. I need to get a job done, and sometimes I have to trust that an assembled team shares a common motive, even if I don't trust them otherwise. That's how I took down the collector base. You were there. You saw how that worked or how it didn't work for me. I can't afford to turn down allies that can potentially help me. I need everyone to fight with me. I can't be as picky as you seem to think you can be. If we don't work together, we are going to die. I have to work with the assets I have, not the assets I want. Kaidan's face fell during the course of her words and then reassembled. You're right. Of course you're right. I'm sorry. There's nothing you can do that would be proof, and that's not your fault. I do promise you, though, as much as I don't want to, I will shoot you, Shepard, if you turn blue. I'd expect nothing less. You were always stubborn, Kaidan. Me? Liara said. Yes, you. Kaidan, you missed a lot. So did I. Think about it. Everybody is a target for indoctrination. There is no reason why you could not be indoctrinated also. Or do you think that high-ranking officers of the Alliance are immune to targeting? You think Shepard isn't watching you? watching me, watching everybody, including herself. She just doesn't do it in a way that interferes with the mission. Okay. I'll go along with that. You're already blue, Liara, so it might take a little longer to figure out if you're indoctrinated. I concede that you might have to shoot me if I'm indoctrinated and I don't know it. If I have to shoot you, ladies, I'll be sorry to do it. Morim said, You can try it, Alenko. I don't like your odds. Tell me about it. This is not the first time the two of you have ganged up on me. Liara said, I'm allowed to touch her ass now. Morim said, You said you wouldn't tell. Wait, you two? I thought you and... Me and... Liara said, No, you're right. It's not me. It's Garrus. Yeah, well, I'd heard. The tattoos? They're Taurian? Morim nodded. Yes, we were married recently. Liara said, It was a lovely ceremony. It isn't hard to believe. It isn't a surprise. The two of you were always... I'm jealous as hell, but... Well, if I'm going to trust you, and I do, I should admit... He shook his head and refocused. Thanks for working with me, Shepard. I won't let you down. I'm glad you had Garrus to back you up, and I'm sorry I wasn't there for you. I'll try to fix that now, if you'll let me. Of course I'll let you, Kaidan. We need you. Last I talked to Garrus, he was fine, and hopefully he's on Palaven, and hopefully he's alive and perforating Reapers. I know better than to bet against him. Calm is down now, but we'll go there as soon as we can and track him down. He's focused, and we need to do the same. He and I have decided that if our lives are going to be interrupted, we are going to kick the ass of everything that gets in our way. So, now that we've assured ourselves that we're all terribly attractive, we're all watching each other, we all have reasons to fight together, and that I win because I have Garrus, or at least theoretically still have Garrus if he's alive. Can we continue? Of course, Shepard. I'm sorry. He's an impressive soldier. He helped me customize my pistol grip. That's not a euphemism for anything, is it? Liara laughed, and Kaidan said, Shepard, I'm gonna blush. Shepard sat with her elbows on the edge of Kaidan's bed. Kaidan, wake up so I can tell you to stop getting your ass kicked. It's important. You need to hear this. This wasn't the end of the mission. We have to finish the mission. You look like a giant stomped on you with cleats, you know. It looks good on you. You know you're a handsome man. Kaidan. Get up. There's more danger, and you don't want to miss that, right? She took his hand and held it to her forehead. I know you're in there. I know you can hear me, and I'm going to be bossy. Think about it, Kaidan. You can't let that silver bitch win. I'll track you down in the afterlife, and I'll make fun of you. Yeah, you heard me. She put his hand back down carefully on the blanket. I don't know if you believe in a god. I never asked. I wish I had thought to ask. I hope Ashley is praying for you. Ashley, if you're listening, I know you possibly outrank me now, but I don't care. Please help. I hope a god somewhere believes in you enough to bring you back. Whoever is out there, please listen. Bring this man back and take away his headaches. I am going to die again someday, and I'll have plenty of time to figure out if someone is in charge. If there is a God and you're not helping, I'll find you. Timeline. Priority, Palaven. Garrus. She was alive. There she was. Right there. He heard her voice, rough, tired and angry, and beautiful. I need someone, I don't care who, as long as they can get me the Turian resources we need. The sound spread through his mind and blood like a balm to all that ailed him. She was here. Their plan had worked, and although he himself was rough and tired and angry, that fire in his gut that had burned without fuel flared into a sustaining heat. A hope that had been waning was shored up by her presence. He had a momentary burst of peace that cleared the wreck of his motivation and restarted it. He began to feel that things were finally 51% in his favor. Nobody had any more doubts about the Reapers. He and Moram would not need to hide. They would win. If they'd made it this far, they would win. He was sure of it. Reality crashed back in as he heard the gunfire and destruction around him, but it couldn't stop him from being overjoyed. Behind that joy was the need to kill some things in the best company he could muster. He stepped forward. I'm on it, Shepard. We'll find you the Primarch. She saw him, and her face was unreadable, but her voice. Garrus. Her voice. General Corinthus pulled his attention reluctantly away from her. Shakarian, sir, I didn't see you arrive. At ease, General. He saw her try to decide what to do. Maybe tackle him? No. People were dying. There was a mission to do, but they could do it near each other. You're alive. She stepped forward as though she couldn't help it, and he held her hand in his, bringing his second hand to touch hers as well. I'm hard to kill. You should know that. Shepard. He'd said, Are you kidding? I'm right behind you. And he was. With all the horror going on, she shouldn't be giddy, but that was too bad because she was too giddy to do anything about it. He was here. They'd gotten it done. Horror she was used to. This feeling she had after seeing him was life-sustaining, and she needed every moment of it. So the hard part was done. Let's just go kick everyone else's ass. You're right behind me. Earth is on fire. Palaven is on fire. Our family, our people. They need us. It didn't make her sad. It didn't make her cry. It made her so angry that it was good there were things to shoot. There hadn't been much time for introductions. On the shuttle, James said, It's good to kick some ass with you, Mr. Sir Shakarian. What the hell do I call you, anyway? Not to be disrespectful, I'm just used to rank. Garrus is good. Thanks. You can call me Mr. Vega. James called me Commander, even when he wasn't supposed to. I don't think rank is that much of an issue for James. Yeah, but I'm supposed to call you that now, so look who's right in the long run. Anyway, I think you look like a Lola. I think she looks like my wife. There it is. Hey, for real? Felicidades! You guys on your honeymoon, or what? Garrus. He'd paused to speak to Primarch Victus before making his way to the rest of the ship, and Moram had to speak to Hackett. He'd told Victus he was heading to the battery, but that was not happening yet. He went up to their quarters, and despite the fact that the ship had been gutted and rebuilt, she'd already thought of adding his authorization so he didn't have to hack his way in. No fish, no hamster, no ship models. Yet he always came onto the ship with close to nothing, if not nothing, other than a rifle, and always left with more than he'd imagined. He'd continue that tradition gladly. She'd found clothes for him, replacements for the things he liked, and put them where he'd kept them before. He closed his eyes and imagined what it would be like to be able to cry. How odd that humans had an emotional valve like that. Chemistry and tears. Thinking of it that way, it was almost Turian. He was through and through exhausted. The non-stop battle, the new inrush of hope. He'd been scoured clean of everything that had happened up until now, and only now was of interest. He stripped and stowed his gear, took a shower, and got into bed. He could finally sleep without fear, and he knew she would find him. He woke with her mouth at his ear and her arm around his waist. The reverse of so many nights spent together, his body cradling hers, whispering to her as they both fell asleep. He heard her say, "Please." She took the measure of him, physically, intellectually, emotionally, carried him to his limits and demanded more, and he found he had it for her. To be near her, to touch her, to smell her, to be on a ship that was hers, with people they could count on, with people he could tell that he was hers. Please. There was nothing more to ask. Please, Venri, fight by my side, please. Venri, be with me. Please, Venri, stay with me. They were done. The rest would be done, all the important questions answered. She knew he was awake now. His breathing pattern changed, she'd told him. She could always tell. Something he'd never have known about himself if she hadn't told him. Please, Venri. Please say please. She'd gotten him a Turian pillow, a half-moon shape with a thin upper arch of reinforced foam to protect his fringe so he could sleep or turn without awkwardness or pain. He could turn to her, but instead he pulled her by the arm as he moved to his back until she was on top of him, her body finding the curves and planes where she was comfortable, and he wasn't afraid he was puncturing her in several places. Not that she minded puncturing, but he preferred if it were intentional rather than by accident. Voracious. That was a good word for her. Demanding. That was another. She could command him with a glance she expected him to interpret, or run her fingers lightly over his hide and plate edges as though he were made of frost that would melt and never be seen again. Something fragile to be revered. All the ways she saw him corresponded to all the ways he saw her, from lust to obeisance, often thrown together so his hands felt the fragility of her hair between his fingers as he took care to not pull it, while he drove into her until she lost the focus in her eyes. She watched him with a smile as she rested her chin on his sternum blade so she could meet his eyes. She asked him, "Where is our family?" "Safe when I left them." "I don't know right now. We'll find them. I have access to all the information we can use to find them. When we find them, we will protect them. I can do it from here. Ava told me to find you, protect you. She told me to tell you when I found you that I am here on her orders and that you must not contradict her." She nodded, tipping her head forward with her chin on his chest. His hands sifted through her hair. "We will find them. We did it. We still have a lot to do, but we did it. We did it. And now we can do the rest together. I have been a little distracted, what with running for my life and trying to kill things much bigger than I am. But I have missed you." They were carefully skating the thin layer of well-being, trying not to crash through into the individual horrors they had been mired in since last seeing each other. For right now, he just wanted to be in right now, with her. She smiled. She was tired. Her face was masking pain and exhaustion. Precious. Her smile was precious, and she told him, "Venri, I have missed you." His heart squeezed in his chest. He stroked her hair back and told her, "Let's forget everything outside this room. For now. Let's catch up over lunch tomorrow or dinner next week. We will have tomorrow and next week. For right now, there is just you. Just me. Just here." Her smile strengthened. "Okay. Let's say some obvious things. Get them out of the way. So, I think you're beautiful. I think you're sex in blue." "We're getting fancy, huh? All right. I think the thought of you makes my heart beat." "I think you should kiss me before I have to lunge. The sex thing was a hint." "Hey, I'm trying to be romantic here." "Time to shut up and make with the physical demonstrations of affection." "You sure? I have a sonnet ready to go." "You do not. If you give me a minute, I could put something together." "Odds are it would be about guns." "That's something we share, something we do together. You can't take it from me. Those are cherished memories." He sat up while she was giggling, pushing his arms down and pulling back suddenly so she whooped and fell off him until she was giggling harder, and he told her, "You're really clumsy." She was naked on her back, a work of art in shadows, reds, and creams. He reached out and put a hand on her exposed throat as she laughed, his hand against her skin. One of the first desires he'd had about her, to see a work composed of their skin together. She pulled herself up by grabbing at his arm and sitting up, twisting and turning until she was on his lap, and he'd made room for her legs to curl loosely around his waist. He put his hands on her hips, and she put her hands on his shoulders. She brushed her fingertips against the ridge on his chest and then drew her fingers over her cheekbones and collarbones and then settled her hands back on his shoulders. He watched her, memorizing her face, drinking in the presence that was like water now, necessary to life. They had all the time they needed to touch, all the safety and privacy they needed in this room. Her fingers came off his shoulders to trace the lines of his face. She was reverent. She'd said that humans occasionally would lie on the ground, soaking in the warmth of the sun. She called it sunbathing. She said she liked to Garrus bathe, to sit and commune, to bask. He liked to Shepard bathe. He watched her as her eyes followed her fingers, as she moved her fingers along every curve and line of him that she could find. He had a new buckled plate on the back of his left arm. She found it, and her fingers lingered there. Her eyes and the lines on her face darkened and deepened. It was a combination of how she looked in battle and how protective she was, with the vulnerability of being naked in his arms, and it took his breath away. Then she remembered, only here, only now. And she relaxed, but she couldn't dispel all of her new mood, retaining a new layer of attentive focus. Stories later. There are truths and there are stories, and we choose truth in this moment. When her hands moved back to touch places she'd already touched, he leaned forward and pressed his mouth to her throat under her jaw and breathed her in. Over time, their mingled scents changed subtly, and he familiarized himself with who they were now. There had been battle in her blood while on Palaven, and she still had that sharp edge to her. She curled her hand around his shoulders and slid her fingertips into the spaces where the Kinra lodged, then drew her fingertips back down through the inside of his fringe spikes, one at a time. He nuzzled at her throat and touched the tip of his tongue to her skin, spice and her, and a reason to draw in breath as she drew in hers. She pressed her fingertips again to the hide under his emerging fringe, and her other hand fell to his waist as she dragged her nails over a particularly sensitive line of hide that caused him to groan. No more basking. His arms came around her to pull her closer and up to his mouth. He bent his head down to hers because she was pinioned between his sternum plate, breasts pressed to either side, his arms around her back. His arms were long enough to loop entirely around her back so his hands could move restlessly under her breasts. Her hands came around to capture his face, and she kissed him, her tongue and lips gentle and soft. Here they stayed for more long minutes, deliberately and tortuously slow, exploring and tempting. Uncontrolled ardor would be betrayed by a sharp hiss of indrawn breath or a groan or an unstudied quick movement. They were ridiculously competitive people, and it had played into this ritual of making each other slowly crazy without showing a response, making the other escalate. It was a habit they had fallen into when they had hours and hours to spare, and it was a game to bring them back to familiarity with each other. He needed to convince her to spar again without killing him. He wanted her to try not to kill him again with her marks. That was a project for a later time. Right now, rules were rules, and he couldn't hide from her, so his plates opened, and both her hands started to glide over his cock, an outrush of breath from him, a smile from her. He lifted her slightly and shifted her to right a prominently ridged plate of his thigh, rocking her back and forth. She made one of her beautiful sounds. His memory flooded with all the sounds he wanted her to make again. All thoughts of game fled, and he considered it winning that he got to lift her from her position and guide his cock into her slick heat while she moaned for him. Make those sounds for me, Pagan. I won't stop until you make them, and then I won't stop until I hear them enough times to make up for waking from dreams. The feel of you evaporating from my imagination like frost, never to be seen again. Please. Garrus and Shepard had gone to Huerta to check in on Caden. She had also been able to see Thane, and she was overjoyed that he was here and that he was alive. Thane's reserve had always been deep and was now. Moram likely wanted to hug him for an hour. Thane's insistence on distance was against her nature. She wanted to drag him out of the hospital to talk, listen, spend time. But he insisted that he needed to stay at Huerta. He had given the excuse that he wished to watch over Caden, but Garrus had known that wasn't the full story. Caden was recovering and conscious, though he was still in bad shape. Garrus had gone in with her to say hello himself, collected congratulations on their bonding, and then had left to give them some privacy. Garrus thought that Thane was in love with Moram, and this was a way he could serve her without allowing his own desires to come to the fore. Garrus saw it, recognized it, and he initially doubted that Moram would see it for what it was. Even if she had, what could she do? Ask Thane for truth? She would never ask, even if she suspected. Thane would never tell her. The complexity of perceptive people who cared with intimate intensity and guarded each other with their lives swirled in his head for a disorienting moment. Thane and Moram were both too unpredictable in motive to know why they did what they did. But they were both perceptive. Thinking about it, he decided Moram did know. He decided she'd never let either of them suspect overtly in order to protect them both, Thane from being vulnerable and Garrus from feeling slighted. Thane spoke to Garrus while Moram was in talking to Caden. Congratulations to you both on your bonding ceremony. She is vibrant at your side. She is always vibrant. Is there anything I can do for you? Thane looked down momentarily and then bent his eyes. You are already doing it. I promise you that nothing that can be done for her safety and happiness will go undone. I have no doubts. Had I doubts, I would have acted upon them. Lucky for me. Lucky for you, indeed. Had I met her first. It had taken Garrus a year to come to value Moram for who she could be to him. It had taken Thane less than a week. He corrected that thought. Less than a week before he showed it. He had imagined it instantly. Siha. Thane couldn't help calling her that any more than Garrus had been able to help calling her Venri. That word encapsulated all he needed to know, all Moram needed to know. It wasn't jealousy that gripped Garrus so much as admiration. Thane might have saved her from the Batarian's gun. Thane would not have let her die on the Normandy, and he would never have left her side. Thane no doubt knew she was a better dancer than she intended others to see. Who knew how many questions Thane had the answers to without letting it be known that he had asked them at all? Thane's ruthless purpose and exacting methods would have served him well. No doubt Thane could have plotted a course efficiently and effectively to Moram's heart, and Garrus did not doubt it would have worked. Instead, Thane had paused and waited for Garrus to catch up and pass him, aiding Garrus on his way. For her sake, because she wanted it. That was profound love and a set of skills worthy of her. Had Thane met her first, Garrus told him, I would be congratulating you instead. And I would be dying. And she would be grieving. It is better this way. For my own part, I am grateful for that. But for your sake. Thane waved a hand. For my sake, I had a love. I had a son. I had them long before I appreciated them. I failed to protect them. You have not made the same mistake, though you lost her once. You do not let her go alone into danger unless she insists it be so. I hope for peace, so that you can have a family of your own. I will pray for you, for peace, for family. He paused, his eyes focused through the glass, thought defining the lines of his face. You cannot help but see the state I am in, as it is close to your own heart. It is good that you see, that I wish you to see, that I consider you kindred. You bring her laughter, and she is lit from within with that joy. It is something I could not do for her, something she needs. To find what you need is rare enough in life, and rarer still in those who deal in death. Do not tell her what you see, what I say here. It is also better that way. Don't you think she should know? No. It is a dying man's wish to protect her from that, even more so to protect me from that. She is not a woman of regrets, but she would grieve for my lost opportunity if she knew how much I wanted to take it. She would wish to change it for me. Not by loving me in return, but by wanting to convince me to be satisfied with what I have of her. What I have of her is of course considerable, but I am selfish. To tell it, rather than to show it, would make it seem a pale, lifeless thing. You understand. What I feel she cannot change except to try to diminish it, to spare me from experiencing it. I might feel compelled to lie to her to comfort her. What I feel is mine. Allow me to take it with me to the far shore. Whole. Once you asked me to hold a secret for you, to tell in your own time. I ask of you the same. I will tell her by the shores if she finds me and asks then. She looked for you when she was on Earth. I was on Earth as well, but unable to contact her directly without putting myself in jeopardy of being taken into custody and her in jeopardy of being the cause of it. Had she required assistance that you did not provide? Thane was silent for a long moment, and then said, If you fail her, I will find you on any shore. And I would accept your judgment. I accept your charge and your kinship, and I am honored by it. I hope Erica is waiting for you. I will pray for your family as well. Your strength and dedication will be an inspiration to those who remain, to me in particular. Whatever Thane might have said to that was lost as Moram returned to them and said she was grateful Caden was doing so much better. Thane's face reverted back to his receptive, neutrally polite expression. Thane gave them both his blessing and promise of whatever continued service he could provide from his position. He refused gently her more emphatic invitation to come to the ship, but promised to correspond and of course see her if she visited again. Garrus noted that that would be in public and before witnesses. Garrus felt a slight shiver cross his spine during a shared look with Thane when her back was turned. And then they were gone, back out into the Citadel. The shiver left his spine but stayed in his mind. Odd that bonds so strong could form between creatures of different species when he'd never felt this close to another of his own species unless they were family. Those were bonds of circumstances. These were bonds of choosing. He couldn't love Moram more, but he could feel the sacrifice Thane made for her, for him, and honor it, give it more meaning beyond the two of them. They did some shopping, and although she couldn't find a hamster, she did find some fish. They had everything delivered, so they didn't have anything to carry. He wanted to show her a spot with a beautiful view of the arms of the Citadel, but it was out of the way. It took some trekking through the wards, and they were seedy as ever. He'd made the majority of his busts in this area. Unfortunately for him, the keepers had apparently closed off and repaired the narrow, jagged alley leading back to a rent in the bulwark where there was an overlook. It was a shame. He presented the expanse of riveted metal to her before saying, "Imagine a great view. Really, it was here the last time I was." She admired the entirely ordinary slab of metal and nodded at him. "No, I can see it. It's a commentary on the changing times in which we live." He shook his head. Well, fuck it. If there isn't a view, there's something else." He picked her up and pressed her against the metal and started kissing her, happily and enthusiastically engaged in that for a long while, until they heard a scrape behind them, and he became alert but not still. Being still would give away that he was alert. Her eyes darted behind his shoulder, and then she reassured him with a slight nod. He stood still, hearing a voice. Hey, lady, you okay?" A child's voice. Human. So young it was hard to tell if it was male or female. Moram stepped out from behind him with a closed fist held behind her back. The signal for hold. He held. He didn't turn around. The kid said, "He's not hurting you, is he?" He'd bet male. Human and Turian ages were comparable. He could tell from the sound, and with his visor he could estimate size and age. 12? 13? Moram told him. "No, he's not hurting me. He's my husband." Moram signaled for Garrus to turn around, so he did. He tried to look non-threatening as much as he could, which was hard considering his height, the boy's suspicion, and the fact that as a Turian he could break them both in half in a few seconds. "Really? You can do that? Did he make you do that?" He smiled. "No, I had to ask him. Not sure he would have otherwise. He is very popular with the ladies." "Okay, well, yeah, okay." This would be a good time for the kid to leave, having been reassured, but he stood there, awkward and stammering. Garrus started to get suspicious. Moram's fist tightened and loosened, so he held still, but she knew something was up, too. "Are you okay? Do you need help with anything?" Yeah. Right, right. No, I'm just hungry or something hungry. I'm hungry." The kid was a terrible actor, and Garrus said, "Come on, Moram, it's a trap. He's hungry. He takes you to a secondary location to buy him something, this great place he knows, with his favorite thing, and you're in a shepherd cage." Moram held out her fist, reiterating the signal. "Of course it's a trap, but he didn't need to know that we knew that. Oh, hell. He's gone." Garrus sighed and turned, pulling her hand and navigating his way back out, taking a different route than the one they'd used getting in. "So you were gonna just go with him?" I have no idea what I was going to do. I was in the information gathering stage. The information is that a large majority of the population is trying to kill you. Do you need to know everyone's first name? I suppose not. I hear there's a good place around here to eat. Want to find it? No, we're leaving. Your fish will get lonely. Damn it. Can't we at least let Seasick? Already done. But they'll just get pictures. He might lead to something, he might not. Most likely not. He didn't seem to be the brains of the operation. All right. Have I mentioned you're no fun sometimes? Have I mentioned you're occasionally suicidal and far too easy to bait? Yeah, you have. Now what am I going to do for fun? I've heard not dying is fun. Garrus passed through the echoing base levels of engineering, looking for a spare set of calipers that he thought he'd seen down here before among the endless crates and containers. He heard a distinct "meep" and held still, wondering. Yes, there it was again. He recognized the sound. A little triangulation and a few tries, and he had Morm's hamster held in the loose cage of his hands, grateful for his gauntlets as the little monster had bitten at him at least 4 times on the way up in the elevator, selecting their cabin with a bump of his elbow. He didn't want to find out if a hamster could die from a massive allergic reaction to Turian blood. He tapped his forehead to the door, not wanting to jostle his furry cargo, saying, "Room service." "Come in." "Would you get the door? Room service's hands are occupied." Within a few seconds, Morm's voice got closer, and she said as the door started to slide open, "If you're taking requests about how to occupy your hands..." She stopped abruptly, looking at him quizzically, then following the gesture of his eyes down to the cage of his hands, a tiny fuzzy nose with frantic whiskers poking up between them. "You got me another hamster?" He gently transferred his prisoner into her hands. "I got you the same hamster." "Boo? This is Boo? You got me Boo? How?" "His name is Boo? As in Boo Scary?" "No, as in Pika." She nuzzled her nose against the hamster. Garrus drank in the beautiful and the happiness in her voice, gratified, shaking his head. "Pika?" "No, Peekaboo. It's a game. He always comes out of his little house, leans up against the glass, and then runs away." She transferred the hamster into his waiting cage while she got him fresh water and food. She didn't stop smiling. As explanation, she covered her eyes with her hands and then uncovered them again, her eyes wide, comically. "It's called Peekaboo. You play it with babies." Sounds like human babies are kinda dumb. Have I mentioned humans are weird? She smiled, her hands falling to her sides as she tapped at the side of the glass of Boo's cage. "I had a hamster as a little girl. I loved her so much. All of my little girl soul poured into this furry little jot of adorable. I wanted to be best friends, a human and her familiar, so romantic. But I realized before too long that she wasn't my soulmate, and it wasn't romantic. She really just wanted to bite me and run away. Hard lesson to learn. I still loved her, but I gave up trying to play with her, and I just took the best care of her I could. Hamsters don't live all that long, but I was still devastated when she was gone. When I saw Boo on the Citadel, I couldn't resist. I still know he wants to bite me and run away, but I can't help wanting to give him the best little space hamster life I can. He can go to exotic places, look at fish, have a screaming head direct screams at him. Let me throw that head out the airlock. I'm asking again. Nicely. Please. Never. James loves him. They will be life partners. Anyway, Boo doesn't have to love me back. I can still want to. A tear slipped down her cheek. I might bite you, but I promise I won't run away. He leaned down and nipped the flesh that corded along the side of her neck gently with just the tips of his teeth, grazing until his teeth almost met. Then he touched his tongue to her skin. She sighed and leaned back against him as his arms came around her and crossed, drawing her back. The tension in her shoulders melted as she leaned back with that wholehearted trust that humbled him. She smiled and said, I hope it wasn't a power thing. I really love that hamster, but I could loom over it. I've never been able to loom over anybody, unless it was a Volus. Shepard. Diana Allers had been asking for crew interviews. Many of them were authorized, but she had angled for more, saying, I'd like to interview Garrus Shakarian. He's not Alliance. He's part of the Turian delegation and a strategy advisor to the Primarch. That's exactly what I'd like him to tell me about. Okay, but keep in mind that I don't tell him what to do. I wouldn't recommend trying to interview him. You are aware that Turians aren't as big on reporters in the military as humans are? In fact, the word reporter is probably synonymous with traitor under these circumstances. The Turian military handles its own press releases. There's likely an ugly Turian word for you. And I could ask him what that is. I want to try, at least. It would be a coup. Okay, go ahead and ask him. I get to be in the room if he says yes. In the room, but not on camera? Oh, no, not on camera. I just want to see. By the time Diana had gotten back to her about the interview, Moram had forgotten about it. She hustled down to Diana's cubbyhole and leaned against the wall. Garrus tilted his head and looked at her. Ms. Allers said that you permitted this? I told her not to try. Is there a vile Turian word for war reporter? Garrus looked at Diana dubiously. Yes, but we don't tell reporters what that word is. It's a small act of defiance that happens to be culturally widespread among Turians. If Ms. Allers had done her research, she might know that. Garrus, that makes no sense, because if you don't tell reporters the word for them, how are they supposed to be able to report on that? That makes it only hearsay. I told her you might have an objection. Diana interjected. I'm just trying to help with the war effort. Palaven is under attack, and you are the symbol of alliance and Turian cooperation. Okay. Diana tilted her head forward and waited for him to say more, but he sat down and watched her until she realized he wasn't going to volunteer anything. Commander Shepard told you I would answer questions? Moram raised a brow, and Diana said, Not exactly. But you wanted to give me that impression. Yes. I see. Okay, I won't ask anything about military movements or strategy. I'm really just trying to get a good picture of the people on the ship. Okay. Let me just get some background then. Where did you get such an impressive scar? Garrus leaned back in his chair. He looked down, then took a deep breath. He looked up at the ceiling, shook his head, saying, That is a question I haven't answered. He looked haunted. He had Diana leaning forward. There was a horde. A horde of marauding hamsters that attacked during the Battle of Hokey Pokey. Barely got out with my life. One of them took a piece of my mandible and displayed it as a battle trophy. I still have nightmares. That magnificent bastard. Diana frowned. Okay, I think we're done here. He stood and walked over to her. Why are you here? I told her she could ask you, but that I got to be in the room if you said yes. Happy to amuse, as always. You could have given her something. Not battle plans, but something. I didn't learn anything. Okay, if that's how you feel about it. He pulled Moram to him and dipped her into a dramatic kiss. After being startled for a moment, she happily participated. Garrus pulled her back up to her feet, and Diana did her best to recover, saying, "There have been rumors of your involvement, and there are even some vids in circulation that claim to be you and not a simulation. What's it like being an interspecies couple?" "Commander Shepard is my wife, Ms. Allers. We're an interspecies marriage. To answer your question, it's like being pulled into the gravitational well of a singularity." You're so romantic. I've wanted to do that, or something like that, but much more embarrassing for a while, so thanks for the opportunity. You could have just told me. We could have had a press conference. Feel good about that? Yes, I'll be in the battery. I imagine she has some questions for me now. I'll leave you to it. I still have approval over everything that goes out. Damn. I still haven't learned anything, Garrus. I'm not here to amuse you, Shepard. He left the room, dismissively waving over his shoulder. Diana saying, "Could have fooled me."